Hola, buenos días. Como saben ustedes, tengo otro canal de YouTube. Colocaremos el nombre específico del canal en la plataforma de Instagram. Como saben, publicamos en este canal un bonito documental completo el otro día, por cortesía de Oliver Stone y por cortesía de La 2 de Televisión Española. Anteriormente a ese, comenzamos con otro documental que tenemos por terminar. Hay espectadores que les ha resultado muy interesante la información a nivel militar y deseamos continuar con ello. Esperemos que les plazca la información y que se indignen lo más posible, por favor.
Todas estas leyes no crean seguridad, solo suprimen libertades. Como comenta Jesse Ventura, exgobernador de Minnesota y también exmiembro de los SEAL, grupo de élite de la Marina.
Secure our borders?
No.
Oh, keep them wide open so enemies can come in?
No, enemies come in. I don't get the fact that the supposed enemies came in from Canada, so we're fencing off Mexico.
Well, don't our enemies...
How do we manage that? Shouldn't we be fencing off Canada?
Well, both.
Both?
Yeah.
I don't want to live in East Berlin, Sean.
I don't either.
I don't want to live in East
But
Berlin.
I don't want to live in a country where enemies can cross over.
Well, I look at it this way. We're losing our rights because of the Patriot Act. I would rather, and as I say in my book, and I'm so crass to say, give me liberty or give me death.
I'm with you.
I would rather take my chances with terrorism than to lose my individual rights, which are vanishing every day. Let's remember, I stand for freedom. No, let me give it to you this way, Donnie. If America is changing because of the war on terrorism, then the terrorists are winning. Because we may be beating them on the battlefield, but if we're getting our freedoms taken away and America changes because of what terrorisms do, the fear of terrorism and government there to protect us, well, then, in my opinion, the terrorists are winning.
But Jesse, you have to admit, if we don't do something, the reality is terrorism is a new kind of war, and it's nothing we've faced in our over 200-year history. And some things have to be done different. This is a different kind of enemy, and to put your head in the sand and say, we can't change anything, I just think it's ignorant.
Wait a minute, nobody's putting their head in the sand. We're as ill-prepared for terrorism as we've ever been. Take a look at the hurricanes that just hit this country. They were even announced 3 to 4 days ahead of time. Now, when the terrorists hit us, do you think they're going to send us a memo telling us 3 to 4 days ahead of time we're going to hit you? Get prepared. We couldn't even handle what happened in New Orleans, and yet we're being sold by our politicians that we're safer today, that we're out there protecting you. We've got this big government bureaucratic agency on terrorism that's going to protect you. It's a bunch of hogwash, Donnie, and if you believe it, you're naive.
But so what do we do? Okay, let's say now you got to go get bin Laden. Why can't we find this guy? This is the one question I don't understand. He's a 6'6" Arab guy. We have unlimited funds to spend. You put $1 billion on his head as a reward. Why can't we get this guy?
Because I don't think we want him that bad.
Tell me what makes you say that. Why don't we want him that bad?
Because we should have gotten him. That's what tells me that. We've had since 9/11/01 to get this guy, and we failed miserably.
But the statement that we don't want him bad, I think it's hard to find. It's another question why we haven't found him. But to say we don't want him, you say there's some political agenda reason we wouldn't want Osama bin Laden?
Well, I'll tell you why we couldn't do that. We need our military on the oil spigot over there, and we cannot have our military away from the oil spigot because we're so dependent upon it. We take a break. When we come back, I'll tell you how it's impossible to make us safer as a country.
Okay, yes, sir. You were going to give some answers, correct?
Well, I'm going to give you an answer right now. You give me Dick Marcinko, myself, and 8 of our other former SEALs, and 10 of us will paralyze the whole nation.
How do you mean?
Simple. Look what the two guys did, the snipers. They paralyzed 4 states and 20 million people, and they weren't even that good. You take 5 coordinated sniper teams, put them in 5 different locations around this country and start randomly killing people, and you would bring us to a freeze. You would bring America to a freeze.
Well, of course you would, Jesse. 5 lunatics, strap grenades
That
and walk
won't-
into 5 different malls to cripple the country. So, what do you say?
Well, and that's what I'm telling you. How do you protect against that?
Well, you're not giving me an answer.
Why do you take away freedoms to stop that? Because taking away freedoms is not going to
Jesse,
stop that.
Para complementar este marco jurídico totalitario, esta mafia usó a Clinton para preparar a la población civil para lo que se prevé suceda después del segundo ataque de Al Qaeda, el control militar de la población civil de los Estados Unidos. De 1998 al año 2000, Clinton llevó a cabo ejercicios militares en las principales ciudades de los Estados Unidos, sin que la prensa controlada informara absolutamente nada respecto a estos hechos. Solo unos cuantos reporteros independientes hicieron públicas estas maniobras. Estos ejercicios militares no eran otra cosa que un ensayo de un golpe de Estado militar.
Attention, attention, attention. American forces are here to help. Remain calm. We will not tolerate civil disobedience. Attention, attention, attention. American forces are here to help. Please, please remain calm. We will not tolerate civil disobedience.
Well, I think terrorism is being practiced on the residents of the city of Oakland because many of the retired teachers, retired military people have informed me that they understand what's going on, and it's not anything that relates whatsoever. This is a psychological, as we in the research community say, this is a psyops. They're preparing people for what is coming, not what is being presented today.
So you're saying they're preparing people to accept it with incrementalism?
That is correct. Like the old frog example. You put the frog in the water and you just gradually continue to raise the heat on the water until the frog is cooked. And that's the way it works.
Los militares incluso pasaban por encima de las autoridades locales de las ciudades.
Well, I think that there were various approaches. For example, when I originally said no several weeks ago, matter of fact, a couple of months ago, but no was never no. And then no was never no. End-runs were done around to various community leaders. I had someone...
Excuse me, sir, you're saying that they ignored the police chief, and under our Constitution, you're the same as the sheriff, and you run the city or the county? You're telling me that Delta Force was ignoring your order?
Well, I don't want to say they ignored it, but in a roundabout way, yes, because what they would do, once I said no, they went to various individuals in the community to bring pressure to bear to get me to change my mind.
So they weren't respecting your jurisdiction?
They were not respecting our jurisdiction. I don't think they respected our decision to go into predominantly minority areas of the city where we had vacant warehouses and buildings and try to do those types of exercises at those locations in the middle of the night.
Oh, I'm sorry, middle of the night?
In the middle of the night. Sometime between 9 p.m. and midnight. People become frightened. And we drew a lot of our decision-making on experiences that happened in a lot of other cities. We were very concerned with some things that had happened over there, and we didn't get any real good, clear answers.
So they're being secretive about it?
Very secretive. The decision really was very easy. My interest as police chief is the citizens of the city.
Yes, sir.
Period. And I was not about to jeopardize the safety on an exercise of this magnitude under any circumstance.
Esta mafia ya tiene el día, la hora y la ciudad del siguiente ataque, que como ellos mismos comentan, será mucho más devastador que los ataques del 11 de septiembre.
Good morning. At this moment, somewhere in the world, terrorists are planning new attacks on our country. Their goal is to bring destruction to our shores that will make September the 11th pale by comparison.
Incluso ya han estado acondicionando miles de campos de concentración por todo el territorio americano. Bases militares cerradas hace tiempo, estaciones de trenes abandonadas, plantas automotrices sin usar, han sido adaptadas usando millones de dólares como campos de detención. Como por ejemplo esta estación de trenes cerrada hace ya años, la cual ha sido remodelada con nuevas cercas, torres de vigilancia, torniquetes eléctricos y helipuertos, con la evidente participación de personal militar. Esta mafia prevé detenciones masivas de americanos, todos aquellos que no acepten las medidas impuestas por estos dementes en la última etapa de sus planes totalitarios.
The military bases used to have fences with barbed wire that faced out to keep people from the outside from getting into a secure area. Now a lot of these bases that have been closed down has the barbed wire facing in, as if to keep people from the inside from getting out. Now why would this occur? Is it possible that there is or was a long-term plan that would eventually anticipate rounding up large numbers of people to withhold them?
Escalofriantemente, también han sido descubiertos millones de ataúdes de plástico en las afueras de distintas ciudades. Este macabro hallazgo es un aviso que estos criminales esperan más muertes que detenciones.
¿Ven eso?
El sueño americano ha terminado. A corto plazo habrá millones de asesinos.
¿Ven eso? ¿No les parece muy grande para ser un ataúd? Piénsenlo. Hay millones y millones de seres humanos que matar. ¿No les parece muy grande para ser un ataúd? Piénsenlo. ¿Qué más podría ser eso, queridos? ¿No lo ven como es demasiado grande para ser un ataúd? ¿Por qué invertir más cantidad de dinero y material en crear unos productos que hay que fabricar por millones y millones y millones? Eso no es un ataúd, señores. Son cámaras de gas. Cámaras de gas con el espacio suficiente para que la persona sufra mucho más. Además, una vez que el ser humano está ahí dentro y gaseado, se cierra herméticamente. Y ahí sí, se convierte en un ataúd para toda la vida. La persona no llega a morir del todo, permanece viva en el astral, sufriendo una y otra vez. ¿Comprenden el plan de los satánicos? ¿Lo comprenden? ¿Saben que esta información en muchas partes del mundo ahora mismo es inédita? Debido a la censura que se produjo los años anteriores. ¿Comprenden las implicaciones metafísicas que esto tiene? Pretendían dejarles a ustedes entre la vida y la muerte, gaseados, metidos en supuestas cabinas de plástico llamadas ataúdes. Un ataúd es un lugar de descanso. Esos son cámaras de gas individuales. Para eso estoy yo aquí, para darles la información que no sale en el documental. Hay datos muy duros. Y este es uno de ellos, uno de los que hay que revelar sí o sí, ¿verdad? Clinton, Bush, Obama, etcétera, 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 etcétera. Y la lista sigue y sigue. Millones y millones de personas involucradas. Todos dirigentes del planeta. Y también famosos. ¿Por qué no decirlo a estas alturas? Lo comprenden, ¿verdad? Le meten en una cabina de plástico y se queda usted en el limbo. Ni está muerto ni está vivo. Produciendo energía. ¿Y de qué es esa energía? ¿Han seguido ustedes la divulgación de Obi-Wan Kenobi, Robert, despejando enigmas? Revelación cósmica, semillas estelares. Revisen qué energía querían los satánicos que sus cuerpos y sus mentes estuvieran desprendiendo de por vida metidos en esas cámaras de gas. Bien herméticas y luego bien enterradas bajo tierra. ¿Comprenden? ¿Alguna película muestra esto? Encerrado en un ataúd bajo tierra, vivo. ¿Comprenden?
Asesinatos, ya sea por el segundo autoataque terrorista o por los que resistan la inminente ley marcial. Para los que sobrevivan, el Departamento de Justicia ya tiene contemplado un plan para el condicionamiento de masas, como comenta la doctora Limbooo.
As a psychiatrist, I remember very well the condemnation by the American Psychiatric Association of Soviet psychiatrists and the Soviet Union for their use of psychiatric techniques and psychiatric medications to control political dissidents. Sadly, shockingly, we in the United States have become those same oppressors. We now have a policy as exemplified by the FBI brochure from the Phoenix Office on Counterterrorism, which says people who are defenders of the U.S. Constitution against federal government and the UN, and make numerous references to the U.S. Constitution, should be monitored as potentially murderous and fanatical terrorists. By extension, should be considered mentally unstable. Under the new Freedom Commission, mentally unstable people must be medicated on a compulsory basis with lethal and untested but very profitable psychiatric medications.
Además, existen ya programas federales para la evaluación de la salud mental de niños y adolescentes.
The New Freedom Commission is a federal program to mandate the bogus screening and compulsory medication of children from infancy through 18 years of age in this country. Through the use of completely inappropriate screening techniques, any child who deviates from the prescribed feeling and thought pattern that is allowed to them will be compulsorily medicated, even over the objection of their parents, with dangerous, unproven, and untested psychiatric medications to control their thoughts, their behaviors, and to impede their emotional development. This is a federally mandated program.
Esta mafia pretende empezar a globalizar este sistema totalitario usando a sus vecinos México y Canadá por medio de la ilegal Unión de América del Norte. Una unión en la cual los tres países compartirían gobierno, leyes, policía, ejército. Todo esto hecho a espaldas de los congresos de cada país y a espaldas de los ciudadanos. Y al parecer, estos planes ya se encuentran con un significativo avance.
Bush, Fox, and of course Canadian Prime Minister Paul Martin were the originators of the so-called Security and Prosperity Partnership, which critics call nothing more than a North American Union. It means open borders, commerce at all cost, and by the way, without the approval of either American voters or the U.S. Congress.
Critics, though, say there's too little transparency and no congressional oversight. Say foreign policy elites are promoting a European-style union, erasing borders between the three countries, and eventually moving to a single North American currency called the Amero.
After 9/11, the U.S., Canada, and Mexico began what they call the Security and Prosperity Partnership, aimed at beefing up security on the borders without halting commerce. But some conservatives see it as a grand conspiracy by President Bush and others to erase our borders with Mexico and Canada and surrender our sovereignty to something called the North American Union.
There is a fervent belief among some conservatives that President Bush is planning to dissolve the borders with Canada and Mexico as part of a secret effort to form what is called a North American Union.
I call it a stealth process. Well, I say the president is engineering, as it were, almost a coup d'etat, almost a change of government into a regional structure. That's more than a dialogue, as the SPP.gov website shows. That's a shadow government in full operation, below the radar, not fully disclosed to the public.
The Amero is the proposed new currency for the North American community, which is being developed right now between Canada, the U.S., and Mexico to make a borderless community, much like the EU, and the dollar, Canadian dollar, U.S. dollar, and the Mexican peso replaced by the Amero.
You really think that will get any leeway?
You may want to visit a couple of websites and see how far along it is. The Canadians are pretty upset about it, whereas the Americans, apart from the Texans, are the only people who know anything about it. The rest of the public's really sort of with their head in the sand on this one.
It's a big idea, a new world order, where diverse nations are drawn together in common cause.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
Up until this century, the year 2000, if you didn't like what was going on, you just moved. You got away from it and started off again. You got your little house on the prairie and lived your own life. The problem today is There's no place to go. We're going to have to turn, and we're going to have to confront Big Brother. And we're going to have to struggle if we're going to maintain our individual liberty and freedom.
No debemos olvidar que en esta lucha, este grupo usa como arma principal a la mentira, cuya fuerza y efectos duran un tiempo, mientras que la verdad que se le opone dura por siempre.